Welcome to Muscle Box Radio. I'm your host, Stephen Box, and my co-host is Michael Harrison. This show is going to be all about nutrition, training, bodybuilding, with loads of banter. We're going to be giving you the evidence, the science, and breaking that down with the help of some amazing guests and industry leaders to give you that application. So make sure you subscribe, and I hope you enjoy the show. Stephen Box.
Mike Harrison.
And we have today with us the infamous
Rich Senewald.
Yeah, Richard Senewald. Mate, great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to be here virtually.
We had you are our fourth guest now.
Yeah.
We had Varushka, we've had Jeff, we've had Dan, and now obviously you. Yeah, nice.
Really scraping the barrel now.
Yeah. Yeah, we're just going like
no one's returning your calls.
Nosedive. Rich is on. Yeah. So I've got to do an apology to start off with. I'm now 18 weeks or something into prep, and if I mix up any of my words, it's because I'm putting it down to having prep mouth.
Good save. Yeah, I'm dieting too. Yeah.
It is literally like I'm drunk sometimes. So no doubt I will mix up my words.
I'm going to start with that quite often now.
Yeah.
In future. Oh, guys, I know I'm supposed to be speaking for an hour on caffeine, but I'm dieting, so...
If we start talking about Pokemon, then that's just what we're going to start talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's not start on that.
Yeah, I just like to put the disclaimer out there first in case people are like, what the hell are these guys on about? At least I've told you that, you know.
I haven't been too bad so far, although I have lost 2 sets of keys in the last couple of weeks.
Nice.
Which hasn't gone down well.
Mate, I can't imagine it has.
As long as you've got like new ones cut or found them again.
Yeah, well, I lost them on the same day as well. Two different sets. Not even the same keyring, just 2 different sets. Both gone.
Rich, 2 minutes into your show and it's getting really middle-aged already.
Rich, Dan's become quite forgetful that he, the other day, left his laptop on the train. He got that forgetful.
Oh, what have you got him on?
I think he's on a diet break at the moment, but he was on 175 carbs and 40 fats.
I think it's probably worth mentioning. I know we're supposed to be talking about muscle gain, but what you guys are doing is not a normal reflection of an average person dieting down to lose a little bit of weight for summer, or it's probably worth putting that out there because everyone's going to be thinking, oh shit, I don't want to do any dieting with you guys.
I think they know by now, yeah.
Yeah.
Unless they're new to the podcast, in which I would say go to episode 1 and listen through, yeah. But I think from what I've sort of gathered, most of our listeners, and I think there's probably only 2 or 3 of them out there, so it's not difficult to gather that sort of information, are, people who are interested in competing, doing a photo shoot, maybe it's their first time doing a show or something, so, or just kind of aspiring, young bodybuilders, really.
Cool.
So we thought it'd be great to get you on the show today and just speak about all things muscle gain, as you've got a considerable amount, and you know your shit better than anyone.
Anyone?
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Thank you.
So,
certainly more than us 2 fucking idiots.
Yeah.
Well, that's the only reason why we started doing this podcast, wasn't it, Mike?
Well, the podcast is usually a week of me and you winging it, and then we get somebody with a decent reputation on the week after to sort of bring the level up again. Yes. And then we'll go again next week, and we'll wing it. And then obviously the calibre of guest, as we've just discussed, is going down. And I think we've got Dave, who I met in the post office next week, coming on. So, yeah.
Just going around all the big guys in the gym.
And then finally we'll bottom out and have Chris Emmett from Team Box on.
Anyone wearing a tap-out shirt is a straight pass on the show.
No, we are actually due to get Chris on at some point on the show, and Laura, so they'll come on and discuss a topic at some point. And we should probably get your partner in crime on, Rich.
Gary.
Get Gary on, yeah.
Yeah, he'd be keen to talk about a lot of the stuff that we're doing at the moment, actually.
It's like Gary Glitter.
Yes, he's my partner in crime.
Just want to clear it up. It's not Gary Glitter, right?
No.
Right.
I haven't spoken to him in ages.
I think I
distanced myself from that guy.
I think Gary Glitter did his first ever concert in my hometown of Melksham.
Really? Did you
on the
go?
podcast?
How old were you?
I think it was the year I was born, actually, so I think I just missed it.
Wow, claim to fame?
Yep, that's my 5 minutes right there. So Rich, let's a little bit about you. So just for the listeners who don't know Rich Senewold, and I'm sure that out of our three, there might be one person who doesn't.
For both the guys who don't.
Yeah. So a little bit about you, Rich. What if you had to give us a 1 minute synopsis of Rich Senewold? What would it be?
Oh God, I'd spend the first 50 seconds thinking, and then 10 seconds probably saying, had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, but liked science. I studied biology, put myself through university by being a PT, went and worked in labs, realised that lab work is shit, went back into being a PT, trolled the internet for a while and met up with the guys at MyProtein at some point who had me do some writing for them, which then ended up me tumbling into some career where people actually listen to what I say for some reason. That's the synopsis of who I am education-wise. Like all good nutritionists, I used to be fat. If you're a good nutritionist, you either used to be fat or you're allergic to everything. That's how you get to be good at nutrition.
Strong.
Clearly, every good nutritionist has a horror story about fixing themselves somehow. I used to be fat, but I realised that fat people are really strong generally. So got into strength stuff, and spent a while competing until, through no fault of my own body tried to kill me, which we talked about before the show.
I wish I would have recorded that.
Yeah.
Put it on as an outtake.
Yeah, you weren't recording at all then, were you?
Yeah.
Basically, I got very, very sick and ruptured my own internal organs without realising, for your listeners, which led to me getting blood poisoning, which led to me being very unwell. So, it wasn't DOMS, it was ruptured organs. That's me.
You trained so hard, you thought you just had abdoms and it was a ruptured appendix. Yeah, nice.
Yeah. Just thought abdominals were sore.
When you say competing, just for the listeners' sake, that strongman, right? Not bodybuilding.
Yeah, because I don't have it in me to lose weight.
Yeah, well, I'll break you, I think, one day.
When I was at uni, I was pretty lean, and then I got money from working, and I didn't have to live off of nothing. So that was a financial reason as to why I was so lean at uni, I think.
Calorie deficit through having no money.
Yeah, and me choosing to train at the gym that was really far away because it was cheap, and having to walk there all the time.
Yeah, good lifestyle choices.
Lots of NEPA, yeah.
So far on this number one rated health podcast, we've discussed that we're on so few calories that we can barely speak, and Rich trained so hard he's ruptured his organs. So a pretty healthy start,
Number one rated by our mums.
Yeah, number one rated, yeah.
She's listened to 2 of them.
Yeah, no, she fucking hates it.
Yeah, and my mum actually said, you swear too much, and we waffle on, and she just wants the information and then get out. So she told me the other day, I just had to press stop.
That is a fair critique, to be fair.
Cool. I was like, thanks, mum.
So for Boxy's mum, we're going to say, if you want to gain weight, right, always do your protein recommendations per kilo of body weight. Same with your carbohydrates, fat as a percentage. To be honest, you probably don't need more than 1.5 grams per kilo of body weight, but people are going to disagree with that. The more muscle you're trying to gain, maybe go higher with higher calories. And if you want to preserve tissue while you're dieting, also maybe put it higher. Also, if you're really fat, you probably don't need as much. If you're lean, you probably need more. There you go. Should we go home now?
Yeah, boom. That's it.
That's it, guys. See you next week.
Yeah,
that's
nice.
just the end of the shows.
So let's, after a great synopsis, let's get into a little bit more detail.
Yeah.
Just because my mum might need a little bit of a help through this. So
she wants references.
Yeah, she wants references. She is the biggest troll out there. So when we're thinking about muscle gain, obviously, great, let's talk about this for the off-season now. You're obviously coming back from an injury at some point. I can imagine, you focusing on your nutrition for... Yeah. And I can imagine you're probably sort of start off with a little bit of bodybuilding style training, won't you? A little bit lighter loads, focusing more on, just getting some muscle activation. So this podcast could work quite well, actually, for certainly what the next phase you're going to be in. And then once me and Mike are done with, making ourselves look like a couple of skeletons, we're then going to probably go into an off-season. So then next year we can go from skeleton to more zombie. And then finally we might end up looking like the Hulk in 100 years' time. That's the goal.
129-year-old Hulk.
Yeah. I'm going to need that long. So, what if we were to kind of have a round, what would be the key aspects for muscle hypertrophy for you, Rich? What if you had to put it down to 4 key areas, or 5, you can have as many as you want, what would they be? And then we could discuss each.
I'll roll a couple into one, and that's in the gym, actually satisfying all of the different criteria for muscle gain. I think people miss that quite a lot.
Yeah.
Which could be a combination of the actual intensity of the training, the volume of the training, and the duration of the training, which kind of all go together to make one package anyway.
Yeah.
But also I think within that, training variety falls into that, because obviously to achieve muscle hypertrophy, there are more than one criteria that you have to hit. You don't just necessarily work them to fatigue. There's lots of other things in there. You can work them through maximal effort, fatigue work, building up obviously the quote-unquote pump is a stimulus for the muscle, all of that stuff. So that's one major thing. I think a lot of people that we generally come across, and that's why PTs are important and helpful, a lot of people don't know how to train intensely or push themselves to a point which would necessarily satisfy that criteria. And that's why you get a lot of people walking up to you in the gym telling you you're using steroids because you train intensely and they use their phone. Not hating on anybody at all. That paired with just really keeping your nutrition simple, especially for weight gain. You don't have to make things really complicated. I think people quite often over-consume calories and, dirty bulk, if you want to put it that way. Whereas in reality, your calorie intake will have increased mostly based on your training increase, which generally goes hand in hand with muscle gain. You tend to train more frequently and expend more energy when you're training for muscle gain specifically over, say, strength gain. Although strength gain should have a lot of conditioning work and hypertrophy work anyway, so it's kind of a roundabout moot argument. But I think people, when they do muscle gain, and strength gain as well actually, tend to just go, right, I want to put on 5 pounds of muscle over 5 months, so I'm going to eat 5,000 calories a day more, and it's just way overshot. And, over-consuming like that doesn't have any benefit. It doesn't reduce the DOMs you might be having. That will come down to actually intelligent nutrition.
Yep.
How many did I need to get? 4. That's 2. Mirror selfies are important, I guess, and choosing the right Instagram filter.
Strong.
That's 4.
No, I think obviously a good approach there and I think one thing that we wanted to do with our Team Box retreat that we're running at the end of this month is actually show people how hard you need to train to elicit a response.
Yeah.
So we're not just going to be there, the coaches delivering the sessions, we're also going to be training with everyone.
Yeah.
So that they can see what it's like to train with us as athletes ourselves.
To get a proper exhaustive training session, people don't focus on it a lot. There's a lot to do with form, focus, time under tension, and a lot of people just go through the motions. Even people who are like somebody who's trying to really exhaustively work their biceps.
Yeah.
For example, technique has a lot to do with how well you're going to gain muscle.
Yeah.
It's no longer about training your body to be able to move the most weight possible. It is about stimulating a muscle fiber.
Yeah.
So I think that's where the box retreat will really help people see that.
I put a video out on my Facebook actually today, and it was I was doing a spider curl, so on the sort of flat end of a preacher.
Yeah.
Keeping form tight, and I was doing a little bit of blood flow restriction because at the moment I can't increase my loads that much.
Right.
Bicep curl. At the end of the day, when you're trying to add on with that next increment of 2.5 kilos is actually quite a lot.
Yeah.
And for me going from let's say 12s for 12 reps up to 15 for 12 reps, that's a massive jump. So I now focus on how do I make that 12.5 kilos a little bit more intense. So me and Dan are in prep. We've been using a little bit of blood flow restriction. Not only do you look real vascular, but it's another way of increasing metabolites in that a little bit of added stress.
Yeah.
So I put
it hits one of those criteria, doesn't it? The actual physical pump of the muscle is massively affected by that, and that is, again, one of the things that will contribute to that stimulus.
Yeah, and I think there's that added benefit of actually, it's like when someone presses down on your muscle, you can start to feel that activation a little bit more. So it does allow those, where there is anything to it, a little bit increased activation, I would say. And anyway, in the video, there was a guy behind me on the cables doing bicep curls.
Right.
And someone commented, look at the guy behind, it's more like a front raise. And there was absolutely no form at all. Yeah, exactly that, Rich. He's doing a low pulley, and it was that. And you're thinking, you've got a guy here who, who's doing fantastic form consistently to someone who's doing terrible form. And it really doesn't matter about the weight at all. Like, I've seen young lads a lot smaller than me, which is obviously fine. We all have a different journey, but they're picking up weights I wouldn't even dream to pick up for bicep curls.
That'll always be something that a lot of new lifters will struggle with, especially new lifters who are trying to educate themselves very well. You'll go to the gym, you will lift with way better form than people, and you'll lift a lot less. And you'll look at some guy who's reasonably large looking, and he'll be lifting way more terribly. There is a time and a place for cheat movements in some training, but I think there's a lot of context missing from there. A lot of people have to realize that person has very likely been training for a very long time, and thus a very long time of inefficient training has got him somewhere half decent.
Yeah.
Whereas you're taking the right approach and training properly, you'll close that gap much sooner. Yeah, I can see why people get upset by that. But yeah, you see people lifting. Well, I see people lifting way more weight than me in the gym, and I was used to when I competed, even in strength competition. But then on competition day, when it came to it, I practiced and refined that form and those movements. And when I add a bit of cheat to that, you leapfrog above in terms of strength there.
And also, you're smart enough to know when to taper and deload, so you actually peak for your competition.
Yeah.
Not so that you just, in the week before, absolutely hammering yourself, thinking, I'll overreach, and then hope that just continues into your competition and you'll be able to see better results. No, you'd probably taper or give yourself a bit of a time off so you could recover.
So absolutely wired that your nervous system is shutting down on the day.
So should we talk about tapers and deloads and expand on that? Because I think a big thing that a lot of people struggle to get into their head, especially when looking for maximum muscle gain, is that if they're going to take a week off or a week's deload, that they're going to lose all their gains. Just how important is periodizing your training.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I tend to periodize more than give just a flat-out deload with my guys. Now, traditionally, periodized training would always go strength first and then move on to other stuff, which is a great way to do it. But very few people are actually genuinely interested in strength training. I find women more so than men, who I tend to work with, are more interested in strength training. So sometimes putting somebody onto strength first when you work with them as a coach particularly can be a struggle. I know a few clients of mine, and I wouldn't normally do it, but I know a few clients of mine where it genuinely was the best thing to do, and I've had to say to them, look, we're going to do some strength training for the first X weeks just to get you to a certain point, and then we'll go back into the hypertrophy training. That's how I'm periodizing you. But yeah, for me, I would be changing the training type and training stimulus over a period of time to sort of factor in those deloads, using different energy systems, if you like, focusing on different types of training and different frequencies and intensities in blocks to give them that time. But yeah, for the general person, perfecting movement, especially unloaded movement, is really valuable. So I might put that at the start and then go on to loaded and then spend a period of time perfecting movement again partway through, which can act as a really nice deload. If you can get somebody getting very proficient and then revisiting, unloaded squats, laying, like I use the Swiss ball a lot for laying leg curls or glute ham raises, and even hack squats against a wall for people as just kind of keeping in the groove movements. Just body weight press ups and things like that can work themselves into a resistance training program. If you give somebody a fortnight or more where they go from, say they're back squatting 180 kilos for 5-6 reps and reasonably comfortably, you give them 2 weeks where they're now doing maybe walking lunges with body weight or a very small amount of weight, doing a little bit of walking outdoors and press ups and stuff, they're not going to come back 2 weeks later and have lost all that strength. If anything, they're probably going to be slightly more supple, slightly refreshed, and having had a slightly different stimulus for 2 weeks, and maybe even have grown from doing some push-ups and stuff.
Yeah, I think with some of the clients that I've worked with, coming from they probably found Teambox or me or Mike or someone, and they've come to us on a lot of training volume. Like, I look at their previous training plan, and it is maybe 4 sets of 20 reps with drop sets, with triple giant sets, with and when they see the plan that I give them, I might, to start with, put them on a higher volume program that I would program, but actually for them it's a massive taper. And I'm saying, okay, I want you to have 3 to 5 minutes rest in between your 3 sets of 10 reps, for example. I don't want you to superset that with cable flies and chest flies and pec deck while you're doing your bench press. I just want you to focus on the bench press.
Yeah.
And then what I might do after that is focus on real basic programming with a slightly higher volume. And then if there's any particular weak areas, so I know with my own prep last year, I really focused on going back to breaking down each skill and each exercise and treated it as kind of like a whole approach. Like the lat pull down, I think for me comes into like 3 different phases. So I would train each phase until I got, as you said, proficient at that, and then you can then start to add more load on once you've got that movement kind of nailed. My physique's grown a lot this year, and I think it's just from spending a long time focusing on my form, getting back to the basics of each skill, and then I can actually now work a little bit heavier. But yeah, once that client's kind of gone through that more higher volume, then they can see the results from that, and then it gives me an excuse to bring that volume down even more, but then ramp up the intensity with the loads, maybe put them on a strength program then.
Yeah, you see people who haven't gone or revisited the basic technique for a while do develop quite sloppy form and technique. The amount of people who I maybe have taken through benching and their bench has progressed quite well, and they're complaining of a plateau or something, and it's not something like, oh, your triceps or your delts are weak or whatever. It's you try and get them to hold their proper form, and they can't retract their shoulder blades properly just because it's something they have stopped thinking about altogether. And you get them to do like band pull aparts or a row with retracted shoulder blades, and they're burning out after 4 or 5 reps on 50% of the weight they can do, because they haven't kept revisiting or mindfully focusing on that form. And that's terrible for physique, definitely, but it's just as bad for people in the strength field, people with weak grips and things like that. The grip doesn't have to be overly strong, but when you think your all-out max effort lift, for example, could be bench, could be deadlift, could be squat, requires the entire duration of that lift for you to be with the fixating muscles as flexed as hard as possible, keeping everything in the perfect position you need them to be in throughout that movement. If you can't maintain that flex for 3 to 5 seconds, you can't maintain the posture. Maybe on a squat, your back starts to curve forward. You lose the tightness in your upper back, which loses the line in the back. Maybe your shoulders shrug forward on a deadlift. The bar goes through a different path. You then slump forward in the torso. Those things all contribute to failed lifts, and also through higher volume lifting to strains and injuries, ligament problems, things like that. So revisit the perfect technique frequently. If you can't lie on a bench, pull your shoulder blades back, down, retract and flex your lats throughout your entire set of 8 reps at a low weight. And if you can't follow that up with, band pull aparts or some sort of, pulling rowing movement with them retracted, they're not strong enough, they can't endure it. And if you're trying to grow and physically look good, then you're not going to get that hypertrophy in those muscles because you're not using them.
Yeah.
People complain about that, yeah.
I think people are scared to sort of drop the load, and when you look at it, I think perhaps look at those effective reps that you are doing at the higher load is potentially going to be next to zero. I know from personal experience that I used to bench press 50s because back in the bro days because I could. Now, how many effective reps were I doing? Probably not any. Now I bench 42s or something like that, but with much tighter form. And effectively the volume's increased. although I'm using a lighter weight, I'm actually going through the whole range of motion. I'm contracting, I'm keeping tension on the way down. And I think people are too scared of sacrificing form, and maybe, obviously, we see the classic ego lifters and things like that. But I know that from my sort of physique this year, I think I've had my most productive year. And I used to be very much the same as what Stephen said in terms of really, really high volume, because I thought, the pump bro, and, drop set and superset. But I've focused on my recovery. I've learned a lot from Steve in terms of, initiating the muscle, working it through the whole range, through different ranges. And I feel that I've had my most productive year. But I think sometimes it's hard to get that across to a client, that perhaps you do need to take 2 or 3 minutes between your sets. And, you don't have to be, life isn't a YouTube video. You're not having to go balls out doing triceps, giant sets and things like that, because it's pushed so much in the media that this is what you need to be doing. It's sometimes hard to fight against that, right?
Yeah.
That last workout me and you did, Rich, I'd just come back from having a virus and an injury, and I think you had just come back from an injury. We just did like a real old school 5 barbell workout, didn't we?
Yeah.
It was so simple, but it's the basics.
Was that the one in my garage?
Yeah.
Some benching and overhead, real simple.
Pull-ups.
Yes, pull-ups. It's nice, simple body, complex compound movements done properly. I wish there was, for clients and for other people, I wish there was like a switch you could flick where, like you were saying, dumbbell pressing. It's very easy to have like really powerful shoulders and almost fire the weight to there. No use of the chest to that point because of the power there, and then you lower them back down. And you can get a pump doing that, and you'll lift pretty heavy weights. But I wish there was like a switch you could flick on somebody and show them like, that's a chest pump. Now let's show you what a chest pump feels like, where you've, like push-ups and flexing and squeezing and proper movement, properly really feeling the pull across the chest when you're moving a weight, not just, there's a bit of pump there. I've got a pump in the corner of my pec sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's something that we're creating as a members area for all our clients, that it goes through every single exercise telling them how to execute that movement properly. And there's a big difference between, some people might watch one of my videos and go, Steve, you talk about full range of motion, but you're not doing full range, or like not locking out, or you're not going low enough. And I think for me, full range is the range of movement to the longest degree or the furthest degree, whilst you maintain tension on the muscle that you want to stimulate.
Yeah, it's easy to slack off on the different extremities of a movement, and even overstretch on some movements.
Like you said, the bench press is or let's take a fly. I can get my arm right the way back here. Does that actually mean that my pec gets involved? Well, not actually until that position, and then bringing it round. For those guys who are just listening, I'm just putting my shoulder right back, and my arm right behind my back there. And there's no pec recruitment, and it's all shoulder until my hand comes out, to the side of me, and that's when I can start getting some pec recruitment to bring that in, to cause that adduction.
Well, that's where understanding of movement comes into it. It's like people who do, say, the leg curls, if you allow your leg to fully slack off, then you're going to be recruiting different muscles to reinitiate the movement again, versus keeping the tension on the body of the hamstring, which you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Allow the leg to relax and go straight at the bottom of the movement. You've got different muscles coming in, which aren't necessarily designed to repeatedly activate a 100-kilo load or something like that. So.
In some people their full range is going to look different, isn't it? Depending on their mobility and the stability that they're able to create throughout the rest of their body angles, limb lengths, torso setup, and it can make a big difference to someone's training. And it's why I'm, when I'm with people, I'm like, well, let's make sure you set up the machine for you, because don't just jump on because I've sat on it. It works. It's great for me and Dan because we're the exact same height, so limb length doesn't matter too much. But when I train with, in Ministry of Fitness, which is a gym down the road, with Emil, who will probably get on at some point, he's like 6'4". So we have to move the machine around so that it's set up in the right way so the strength curve matches his limb length, and the biomechanics is right compared to me, so I can still get maximal recruitment and train in a full range, and so can he. And if we don't do that, then neither of us are going to see the results that we want to see.
Yeah, exactly. Make sure that movement fits you. Movement is fit for the purpose that you want it for, and then it fits you as the person doing it, I suppose, is important.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, that's a good old... have you got any more things about training, Mike, that you want to add?
I think, I think we sort of covered training pretty well there. Should we move on to Richard's second point?
So so how would you set up a deload, Rich? What would that kind of look like?
And how often?
Yeah.
How often? That's very, very individual.
Yeah.
If you've got, like I've got some guys who are genuine athletes, as I would refer to them. They are training twice a day, some days. And the deloads, other than working around their competition and training schedule, obviously quite hard to fit in, will naturally fall during periods where they're not competing, when the intensity of everything they're doing is the lowest. For the average person, most, like I said, don't really need a deload, in my opinion. I know some people have different opinions of that. For me, it's going to be every training cycle, which could be 6 to 12 weeks, you're going to spend a period revisiting the basics. That's going to be their deload, essentially. But the way I like to do it is almost like, people have probably heard of auto-regulation. Pinch this idea from John, the training partner, which is just to get clients to feedback on each individual compound exercise that they're doing in each session, as to whether they hit the numbers, how easy it was, RPE stuff, basically, red, yellow, green sort of thing. And if you start to see RPEs up in the high numbers occurring again and again and again from experience, you'll then go, right, we need to step back. Or if you know that, say, they've got a week where they're in London and they live in, say, Manchester, and they're working in London 4 days that week, yeah, you're going to want to ease back on their training. It's very, very individual. I think anyone who has a solid rule of, you must deload every 4 weeks is simplifying it too much, because for me and you, with they like to say the lifestyle that we lead might be quite mentally high stress, but yeah. Look at me, I'm in my house. I'm on one of my sofas. I feel quite luxurious.
Yeah.
Chilling. I'm not going to be having the same overall wear down as the busy office worker who's trying to achieve the same thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's, for me, how often do you program a deload? When the person, from your experience, starts to require it. That's a real cop-out answer.
No, I think as well it can... for me, massively is determined by the state of the diet that they're in. For a athlete who's in prep, I kind of deload myself and I deload my clients roughly every 4 weeks when they're in a calorie deficit.
Very stress situation.
And I treat it as prehab rather than rehab, because I'd rather keep my clients on the straight and narrow, revisit form more often. So what I'll often say is, okay, over the 3 week block, I want you to progress up load, and I want to progress up the intensity. We're going to reach what we would call like near failure on that 3rd week, for example. Deload back to what you were kind of doing back in week 1, and then that next phase of block 4 could be, okay, a little bit more volume's going to go in now, so let's try and maintain the heavier load that you were doing with a little bit more volume, or vice versa. But with an athlete in their off season, like, I might not do it for 6 weeks, I might not do it for 8 weeks, and it's kind of like that feedback of, okay, I might have maybe scheduled them a deload, and if they come to me and say, Steve, training's going really, really well, I'm like, well, let's go for another week then, why do it? Just as you might get someone come to you and say, Steve, I'm meant to be scheduled a deload in 2 weeks' time, but actually me and my partner, we've scheduled to go for a weekend away. Can I take it early? Yeah, let's just swap those around. So it doesn't necessarily have to be fixed, but yeah, having that loose structure around also being aware of someone's nutritional intake is also important, because the factors are different, aren't they? The recovery strategies are different.
Yeah, I mean, if you're weight loss, under eating, essentially, if you're in a period where you are under eating, you're going to tire out more quickly than if you are in a period where you're going for muscle gain and you're basically over consuming. And then lifestyle factors, training factors will all play into either exacerbating or helping deal with that. So.
And obviously, when you're in a deficit, you're probably training nearer the maximal recoverable load, right? Maximal recoverable volume, because obviously the nutrition isn't there to aid recovery like it perhaps maybe would be in the off season. So when you are in the off season and you're trying to develop muscle, how would you look at volume? Would you go for volume towards the maximal sort of recoverable amount, or would you go for more of a minimum effective dosage?
Personally, well, client specific, obviously, what they enjoy, what they can deal with. But for me, everything I do is always maximum, always as much as you can get away with.
Nice.
But yeah, some clients just might not deal with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, as much volume as they can comfortably perform without affecting the rest of their life. There's higher frequency on things like squats. So I'm very, very fond of high frequency for lifting, especially compound lifts. I use a lot of my stuff. Like coming back to satisfying as much criteria as possible, I really like the sort of modified rotating each week of a power movement, a volume movement, and a conditioning version of a movement, all in a rotating week. So you're satisfying as much criteria as possible while still recovering from it.
Yeah, and also you're getting better skill acquisition, aren't you? Because you're repeating that skill over and over again. So you're greasing the groove, and that's all going to have a knock-on effect. I know that after doing high volume squats, when I come to max effort, it's like a practice run, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I did a period of high volume squats when I had my shed with no electricity in it, in the dark. So high volume. Don't anybody do this. And then say it was because I said so. But the best thing I ever did for my squat was high frequency squatting pretty much in the pitch black. Because in terms of like spatial awareness and greasing the groove, my squat was just the best.
And then he ruptured his appendix.
Yeah, that was much later.
Yeah.
So we'll take a break there. That's pretty much training covered off, and we also touched on deloads, which is great. So we'll be back in the break, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about nutritional strategies now. We can get into protein, maybe get you talk about carbohydrates and sugar. Yeah. And then...
How fat can you get?
And maybe we talk about some weight gain expectations without going to the permabulk stage. What's, like you said, with that is, do you just go all out and think, well, I'm just going to eat absolutely everything, or do you try and just do... I think that might become minimum effective dose then. How much of a surplus do you need to be in to create the stimulus without, prolonging the pain of your diet when essentially you come around to prep?
Yeah.
So, obviously we'll be back in the break. Welcome back from the break, and we can take this opportunity just to thank our sponsors, Muscle Food, our recent winner from our competition, and has, I think, reclaimed their prize now. His £75 voucher that they put forward, so big thanks to them, and I'm sure he's going to be looking forward to some pizzas. He said he's going to be ordering, and he did actually send a question in, so I think we'll answer that on next week's show rather than this week's, because we've already got a couple lined up. So congratulations again to him, and a big thanks to obviously Muscle Food, and they're going to be helping us out with our retreat as well at the end of the month, supplying some goodies for that, which is going to be great. And I think these may be making a cheeky appearance.
What flavour you got there?
Ooh, shh.
Oh, secret.
Dark chocolate, mate, that is.
I thought it was like an unreleased flavour or something.
Yeah, no, I wish. Yeah. I've just got myself a little Highlights hot chocolate with marshmallows. I don't know, I'm just going to show what's going on here for everyone watching on YouTube. You can enjoy. Prep is obviously going hard at the moment. It's funny, we had a...
We're so condescending, aren't we? We're so patronising.
We really are. And
it's all just fraud. Those are actually just packaging peanuts from an order he made today. And it's bath foam. We had
one of our listeners, actually, she tweeted me and said, so I thought I'd dip my toe, downloaded the ebook, and tracked my bro meal plan. I'm eating 280 grams of protein at 60 grams body weight.
Wow. That's a lot. That must be heavily supplemented. That or just, like, she lives on a turkey farm or something.
I don't even eat 280.
It's difficult. I find, like, I've had this chat with like John, the guy I train with quite a lot. Obviously, we both have quite high calorie.
He's not a very strong guy, is he?
Nah, just like a 400 kilo all natural deadlift. Just, you know. But we both have high calorie intakes, and the amount of protein that people seem to think we're eating, and we're like I just couldn't manage that much without heavily supplementing my diet. Not because like I'm a wuss and can't do it, but palatable. It would just be unenjoyable for me to eat that much in terms of protein containing foods. Yeah, I love steaks. Also the cost. You know, I love steak, I love eggs, I love fish, but yeah, that's a lot. I did an article for a recent rival company to your sponsors on that, actually.
That's fine, mate. Yeah. No, and it's an interesting one because I think, again, when clients come to us and they're on, like, let's say a guy comes to me on 300 grams of protein, and I'm like, okay, so I get it that you like to eat protein and there's nothing wrong with that, but what if I told you you could replace those calories and have extra carbs and more Cocoa Pops? And then they're like, yeah, this makes some sense now.
It's getting the insulin hypothesis out of people's heads. Like, just because there is some carbohydrate present in your meal doesn't mean that you're going to get fat in that one sitting.
It's the go-to, though, isn't it, the protein? Because
Has anyone else just got a frozen mic?
Yeah, Mike, you froze up there, mate.
Oh, no, I'm not freezing up, am I?
It's the low carbs.
It's prep.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, it's not. That's not the system. That's my functioning that's starting to stutter. Am I good now? Yeah.
You want to blame your coach, mate?
Yeah, dickhead. It's the bodybuilding macronutrient, right? And it's like if protein builds muscle, then all of it, must build more muscle. And I remember I was like 19. I was in the Air Force, and there was a big guy in the gym. And somebody had spoken to him, and he told him he drank 10 protein shakes a day, and I was just like, "Fuck, this is going to cost me a lot." Just like, people get drawn into that, and it's like, "Oh, I'm trying to get some muscle on." So what have they done? They've gone and bought a tub of whey protein. They've bought packet after packet after packet after chicken. And it's just like it's not doing anything. You've cover your amount, cover your bases. Spend it on something else. Spend your calories on something that's going to make a difference.
Or more enjoyable.
More enjoyable.
Enjoyable will make the difference because you're more likely to adhere to it, not lose all your friends, and not be such a bore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that brings us quite nicely into protein intake, actually. So if we're looking for... And obviously, we've always said on this podcast, we look at people's preference first and kind of use that as a baseline, go from there. And then if we need to make some adjustments, we'll try and, encourage that through education of, telling people, okay, yeah, you don't need, 4 grams per kilo of protein. You might only need this and you'd still get the same result. But it does mean you can spend more of those calories on carbohydrates or fats, which, are going to fuel your performance that little bit better in the gym, and give you maybe better satiety and more flexibility within the diet rather than just eating chicken, broccoli and rice every meal.
Yeah.
So, where would you... Yeah, what are your thoughts on protein intake? So we can talk about total, we can talk about timing, talk about maybe the type of protein sources, the dosaging, maybe the spreading out protein, whatever it might be. What do we think is kind of some good guidelines? And then if you were a real serious competitor, what do you think maybe, Phil Heath should be doing in regards to his protein intake? Because obviously his is going to be different. He's an elite level athlete, and therefore is going to be looking for those 1% differences, because they're always nice to think about and hypothesize about, aren't they?
Yeah, and again, we're going muscle gain here. We're not talking combative, yeah. So I think first of all, you've got to kind of categorize yourself as to where you sit in terms of competence. So, like you said, Phil Heath is going to be looking for that 1%. Whereas the dude that Mike met in the post office, who's on next week,
Big
Dave from the post office, is probably closer to the amateur/newbie level, and maybe doesn't quite have his diet down anyway. So, whilst it's nice to theory craft, if you like, about what's the best, what's going to work for you is important. So, first of all, nailing overall daily protein intake.
Yeah.
So, that's like your first introduction to tracking macros, is ad lib dieting through going, right, I'm 100 kilos, I want to gain a significant amount of muscle, but I like protein containing foods. So you look at your diet diary, I tend to eat high protein foods. So I'm going to say safely I can eat 2 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. That's pretty nice. So my goal now is going to be 200 grams of protein a day, whilst hopefully staying within my calorie boundaries. That's going to be your first approach. Overall total daily protein intake. Yep. You can then go kind of one or two ways there, because if you're a vegetarian, you might want to actually start looking at the types of protein you're eating, because that's going to have a difference. If all of your protein intake is from one food as a vegetarian, like cheese on toast, although that's actually cheese on whole wheat toast is a pretty good choice for complete. But yeah, looking at that intake. If you're omnivore, probably nothing to worry about in terms of where the sources of your protein are coming from.
What if you're a T-Rex?
What if you're a T-Rex? Always on a perma diet because you can't reach your fork.
No.
So that's why T-Rex are so shredded.
And have a massive bench press because their range of motion's so small.
Yeah, powerlifting world, T-Rex always won back then.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
Couldn't qualify for deadlift though.
Yeah.
It's just like a glute ham raise, sort of stiff-legged dead all the way. Just anyway, yeah, that's what they're doing now after all the Spielberg films. That's how they're making money, just winning bench press competitions. I heard. Anyway, I don't even remember what I was saying.
Yeah, you were basically talking about the difference of vegetarians and omnivores.
Oh, yeah. So then once you've got total protein intake per day down, veggie might have one route, omnivore might have less to worry about. Then you can start to look at playing around with the frequency of your training and whether you need to even worry about the timing or whether you need to worry about using a supplement to make that intake slightly easier.
Yep.
Once you've kind of mastered that ad lib of your, hitting the protein intake regularly, staying within your calories, you can then look at your other macronutrients rather. I mean, it's going to be the job of a coach to look at anything more specific than that. But, as long as you're eating a good variety of foods, very few people have to worry about any type of deficiency until you go down the dieting route for the shows.
Yeah, and you brought up an interesting point there. Was a lot of people will say, or a lot of coaches will say, if your diet's perfect, or you shouldn't, sorry, that's probably they'll normally say something along the lines as, you don't need to supplement until you've got your diet perfect. Well, I would say, well, if your diet's perfect, why is there any need to supplement? A supplement is there to help a deficient diet a little bit better. So if you're using a whey protein, if you're using a protein bar in order to help you increase your daily intake of protein, then there's nothing wrong with that. That's a good idea.
It's like people believe that suddenly when you take a supplement, you've developed an eating disorder or something. Yeah. And they're like, you don't even touch supplements until your diet's perfect. But you know what? Practicality-wise, it's quite difficult for me to eat oily fish that frequently. So, cost factors and stuff like that. Why not have a fish oil tablet and I'll eat chicken?
Yeah. The guy that I've done a bit of work with and helped him with his training, I knew that he's got a real busy job, and he started to see some really good strength numbers, and he just wanted a little bit of help with his nutrition. And I just said to him, I knew that I couldn't coach him, and I knew that he wouldn't be able to facilitate beyond that practice. And my advice was try and get a protein source at most meals, and then try and take a post-workout protein shake. And then that's an easy enough thing for him to remember to do. And straight away, I've just added 30 grams of protein onto someone's diet when he was when he was under eating protein. Yeah. So actually, he knows that he doesn't need to run out of the shower and, like you say, Mike, shaking his cock and he's shaking his shake at the same time. But it's an easy lifestyle habit to kind of get into for someone who wants to kind of do that before they can sort of make that leap into tracking all of their daily nutrients and stuff. If it is just a case of having a Mars protein bar instead of your normal Mars bar, easy swaps.
Yeah, I mean, the post-workout shake thing, which everyone loves to hate on, because we know there's no anabolic window unless maybe you're training multiple times, is probably the easiest habit to pick up of all of them that's going to have a positive effect on you. Well, generally going to have a positive effect on you. It's you put a flask with some powder in your bag for the gym, and you fill up with water afterwards, and you drink it.
Yeah.
It's a very easy habit to make.
Yeah.
So like you said, I referred to it as the ad lib. You know what numbers you're trying to hit, reflect at the end of the day if you did or you didn't, and build on that. That's your most basic. Very few people need to actually go past that in order to achieve good health and a decent physique.
So for someone who, let's say they've got their, we normally say anywhere from let's say 2.1 up to maybe 2.8 grams per kilo body weight protein. And this is obviously for someone who, when we normally say the higher amount if you're in a calorie deficit, and it can afford to be lower, nearer that maybe 2.1, 2.2 grams per kilo. Well, it doesn't really matter, make too much difference, does it? But for someone maybe in their off season who's got a lot of calories, can you kind of explain why someone might need more when they're leaner and in a calorie deficit compared to when they might have more glucose or carbohydrates in the diet and overall calories?
Yeah, well, if you're in a calorie restrictive phase, you are going to be, your body is going to be catabolizing something. So it's going to be, hopefully, through your training and through your nutrition, taking body fat from your body fat stores and reducing. But there is inherently going to be some muscle tissue loss, especially if you're having longer duration training and exhaustive training. You may be in a point, which is why you put in diet breaks, where your carbohydrate intake is quite low, your fat intake might be quite low. Your body will use amino acids as an energy source to continually, without going too sciencey into it, to keep the energy cycles within the body spinning. It's not feeding in the normal things it will be feeding in, which would be derived from, say, body fat or from byproducts of the breakdown of glucose. It will start feeding in individual amino acids at a certain point to keep those energy cycles spinning, which will, over a long period of time, where what you're putting in is net less than what you're able to store and what you're expending, will lean towards taking from protein from within the diet. In some cases, this could be essential amino acids, and other cases, non-essential amino acids. So having protein in the diet when you're in a deficit, from that point of view, is muscle sparing. It will provide the energy to keep those cycles going. It will provide the energy and the substrates for repair and replacement of the muscle tissue. That's why as you get leaner and as you are in more of a deficit, that tends to be the case. When you're of a higher body fat, when you're much heavier and say have less muscle tissue, well, there's an absolute lean muscle tissue percentage. There's less requirement there because you have less muscle tissue than the leaner person anyway. And frankly, if body composition is your main concern and health is your main concern, then priority should be shifting the weight in general anyway. And it's never going to be all from muscle tissue, even if you have a low protein diet. You're still going to lose the fat. It's where your priorities sit then, in my opinion, as to where you'll set the diet.
Nice.
And carbohydrates and muscle tissue sparing as well. So even when a period of injury, like I would generally say, always generally interchangeable, generally say don't strip out all carbs just because you're inactive, especially if you used to be quite muscular. You still require them.
It's I recently had a client ask me, because I'm going into a deload, or they're taking a rest week, should they reduce their calorie intake? And I was like, well, you're trying to recover from something. What are the 3 strands or 3 aspects of recovery? One of those is overreaching in training.
Yeah.
One of those is an adequate calorie intake. And finally, the other one's sleep. So if you take out your training, but then also massively reduce your calorie intake, then you're not actually providing a stimulus to recover. Yeah.
Your expenditure of energy is still high and your energy intake is still coming down, because they're just kind of meeting each other further down now instead of both being quite highly elevated yet not sufficient.
Yeah, they just have to accept that they're not going to see as much weight loss that week.
Yeah.
But they're actually going to recover, so then that sets them up for the next 8-12 weeks of the prep or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's just having that foresight, isn't it? Rather than trying to live in the here and now, think about what am I doing today, which is going to benefit me tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly.
So in terms of what you were saying about keeping protein higher in a calorie deficit, would you say that it would be more beneficial then to add, let's just say 50 grams of protein on your 100 kilo bloke to obviously have that extra amino acids? Or would you rather have the same amount of carbohydrates? Instead of increasing protein, why not provide more carbohydrate? So you've got more glycogen, and then that could have a protein sparing effect.
On a deficit?
Yeah.
Mainly because of the fact that you will be using the protein source as an energy source, because you're still within the deficit.
Okay.
So unless your carbohydrate intake is very, very high, then it's probably going to be a problem. Yeah. But again, it's going to be individual. It depends how much absolute you're taking in and how strong your deficit is as well.
Yeah.
So if you're on a very, very big deficit, then it's going to be more important. You're going to be putting more strain and more requirements on yourself. If you're doing, say you're training for a mud runner and you're doing marathon events, really long distance, very exhaustive cardiovascular stuff, reducing or not allowing your protein intake to compensate for that is probably going to be more detrimental than if you're just doing light gym sessions.
Yeah, sure.
But you could probably get away with that.
So once we've got obviously total protein nailed, and there might be some habits that we might have picked up, whether it's a case of, we know there's not an anabolic window, but if you're using supplements to help you get to that intake, fine. Obviously, they're all good recommendations. And most people kind of eat a 3 meal a day, don't they? A breakfast, lunch, and a dinner with a snack, or maybe something before they go to bed. For us, that's kind of, and for most people, a decent meal frequency. Spaced out across the day. And that's kind of, no one needs to really worry too much beyond that. So once you've got protein intake, where do we set kind of calories? Let's kind of go into, where should someone set their off-season calories? Is it, let's say they're maintaining their weight on a guide for 2,500 calories. What calorie limit can someone expect to see weight gain, or not necessarily even weight gain, but muscle gain? Because that's the important thing, isn't it? That's what we're trying to improve on.
Yeah. So first of all, this person, say their maintenance is 2,500, they're going through the motions, doing what they're doing, they're maintaining. What you need to then work out with that person is the additional training that they're going to be doing to gain muscle, what that sort of energy expenditure is going to take, or the additional activities they might be undertaking. So activity analysis is a big thing that's overlooked by a lot of coaches. I know you look in a lot of detail at everything people do. I have the people we teach for the academy, we get them to look at like the Ron Moore nutritional science in sports books, which have reference values for any activity you can think of, from mowing the lawn to having sex.
What about playing Pokemon Go? Is that on there yet?
Pokemon Go, that will probably come under light smartphone usage and walking at a slow pace, with occasional spikes in your sort of adrenaline causing a higher heart rate and elevated fat burning when you see like a Raichu on screen or something.
Yeah, nice.
Or a Magikarp.
No one wants Magikarp.
You need like 300 Magikarps to get a Gyarados. That's a lot of Pokemon hunting.
Jesus.
But yeah, so you use those equations to work out the energy expenditure of somebody. So that's worked out on like calories per kilogram of body weight. I spoke about this a while ago, how basically walking the dog is better than going to a spin class, because it's something you do regularly and something you do constantly. And so gardening might be like 4 calories per gram of body weight per hour or something like that, or 0.4 or whatever, as to the energy expenditure. First we'll work out that, because if you're not exceeding that, you're still going to be in a deficit.
Yeah.
So the extra activity you put in has to be met. And then a lot of people will throw any numbers, percentages, whatever. I don't think there's ever been a solid study on what minimum amount will lead to muscle gain.
Well, because we know that you can gain muscle in a calorie deficit.
Exactly. You can basically have body recomposition going on. So for me, it's going to be, right, okay, first let's get the habit of increasing the protein intake by a small amount. We know what sort of calorie requirements physical training puts on somebody, because we know if we take a lean individual of one body, of say 100 kilos, and an obese individual of 100 kilos, we know what the difference in their metabolism is. And we know where that difference comes from. Basically, the difference is the amount of muscle tissue and that constant sort of latent increase from the training stimulus which is going on, which can, that can be like 50 calories a day at most, that extra metabolic rate that comes from the difference between somebody who trains and somebody who doesn't. Because the overall general deciding factor on how many calories you require to maintain is your body weight.
Yeah.
It's, the difference between lean tissue is very, very negligible. If you sat on your ass doing nothing, very similar to somebody who's obese sitting on their ass doing nothing. It's the training that you're doing which requires more energy, and therefore the muscular repair that comes from that which requires more energy. So as little as you can get away with. So it could be, okay, 30 grams of protein and 15 grams of carbohydrate in a post-workout recovery shake, because that is going to be less than like 180 calories.
Yep.
That could be too much for some people. You really don't have to eat loads. And if you are worried that you're not gaining enough, or you're finding you're a bit sore for too long, maybe you want to look at increasing your protein intake. Or maybe once a week you want to go to Nando's and have a sharing platter, and then average it out over 7 days, and it works out as like an extra 180 calories a day.
And that's science.
That is science.
That's science, bro.
Yeah, bro. But I mean, I've said that to people before, or people who are like, oh, I eat and I eat and I eat and I can't gain weight. And I'm like, right, okay, well, come with me to Nando's and eat what I eat once a week. You're paying, because this is your coaching. And if you don't start to gain lean tissue, you're doing something wrong in the gym, or you're not telling me what you're eating. As little as you can get away with, I think that comes back to, and that could be a very small increase. I have one girl on the books at the moment who is gaining weight very, very slowly, and to tell her to eat 600 calories more a day would just be impractical. Appetite and time and finance. So we've literally gone for, first of all, she's increased by a protein shake, and now she's got peanut butter in it. That's it.
Easy choices, aren't they?
Yeah.
Easy
it's going to have no impact on how full she is.
Yeah.
Because she's fine with the amount of food she's eating. And people can fall into that trap. They will eat and eat and eat and eat, and then you actually will develop a much larger appetite, which is a shitter when it comes to dieting.
Yeah. And the thing is, for me, like, some people say, oh, you don't need to worry about tracking your food in your off-season. For me, I do, personally. Because
if you're taking it seriously.
I'm an inherent under-eater.
Yeah.
I can get lean, no problem, without much thought. Putting on muscle, putting enough calories requires me to actually be accountable to that. And I think some people who struggle to maybe gain weight might be in that same boat as me. And then on the flip side, might be a little bit more like Mike, and they need to be more accountable in their prep, because in their off-season, Mike can go through calories, can't you, Mike?
I mean, yeah, I can go through calories, definitely, but I think it's very individual in terms of you get people respond in terms of increasing their need at different amounts. What's different for one person is going to be different for the next person in terms of surplus, because they might just eat away that surplus straight away by upping their steps. And a client of mine was on 800 grams of carbs and 150 grams of fat at one point, and I looked at his activity, and his steps were averaging 55,000 a day. And it's like, well, that's why he's eating so much.
55,000 steps a day is insane.
Yeah, ridiculous, right? And it's like some coaches get sort of, it's seen as like a medal now that they've got a client on X amount of calories or X amount of carbohydrates, when in reality, it's probably just the fact that they're doing more than the people, who were sat at a desk. That somebody who's sat at a desk all day is never going to touch 800 grams of carbs,
Yeah, and it goes the opposite as well. You get some coaches will bang on about, oh, you should never take a client's calories this low.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes you have to.
Sometimes you have to. I'm not saying you have to start there, but sometimes you have to end there.
I like all the research that shows crash dieting is more effective than long-term slow dieting. Nice. I love that. I use that in a lot of the talks that I do.
Sometimes you just have to, right?
It's a good way to wind people up and cause a bit of alertness in the lectures.
Yeah, and that obviously, because then you get a lot of people talk about starvation mode, don't you, Rich?
Yeah. Yeah, heard that on the radio the other day. Someone was being interviewed um, about what they eat for when they do a certain sport, and the woman on the radio just joking, well, semi-jokingly said, "So, I've been trying to lose weight, I'm not doing very well." And he's like, "Oh, what do you have for breakfast?" And she had a crappy breakfast anyway. And the response was like, "Oh, see, you're not eating enough at breakfast, so your body's going into starvation mode, and you'll just be storing all the fat." And I just wanted to phone up the radio station and just abuse them. Just be like, "Get him off."
Yeah.
Shit.
Those anorexics don't eat a great deal for breakfast, but they're not going into starvation mode and storing all the fat, are they?
No. That's the thing. If starvation mode existed, there'd be a really weird sort of thing going on in third world countries that we've ruined.
Yeah, a load of fat people on donkeys.
Yeah. I haven't eaten for days, and now I've got diabetes because I'm so overweight.
It's like when you couldn't afford to eat, Rich.
Yeah, when I was at uni and I couldn't afford to eat, I was just, starvation mode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we'll wrap it up there. We've been blabbering on for about an hour anyway, and my mum won't be happy because it's longer than 5 minutes. But we did give her the opportunity to turn off then because you did summarise nicely. So, yeah, I think just to quickly summarise, make sure that you're in enough of a surplus to see some results, and monitor that. And if your weight's not going up, if you're not seeing improvements on pictures or whatever measurement you want to quantify your results, start to manipulate that, whether it's add more protein, add more carbohydrates, maybe add a little bit of fat into the diet, and expect that you need to deload and taper now and again, and make sure your training is enough to create a stimulus, whether it's volume or load. And me and Mike did a good podcast, I hope it was good anyway, on training, didn't we, Mike? And we discussed a lot of those variables. So we had a listener question, and Rich, I want you to you've got 2 minutes to answer this one.
Oh.
The question is about what are the best thermogenic or fat burners that someone should take.
What are the best ones that someone should take or probably shouldn't because they're illegal?
Whatever. You can talk about it.
Okay.
Open forum.
When it comes to weight loss and weight loss supplements...
Let's start with legal, yeah?
Yeah. Well, I was going to disclaimer that straight out anyway.
Yeah.
When it comes to weight loss and weight loss supplements, if they work, they're probably not safe or not legal, generally. Any other weight loss supplement that you come across, other than very few different ones, are generally going to all be using caffeine or some sort of caffeine mimetic, something that's identical to the caffeine molecule, like caffeine, guarana. They're basically the same thing. Basically, when you use a fat burner, when you take that, when you take a caffeine supplement, you start to just release more fat from cells. You start to use more fat as energy. However, the effect of that is massively, massively overstated. It's just, people say, "Oh, fat burners burn fat." They technically do, but the other thing is you might get habitually used to the compounds within it. So caffeine, once you've taken a lot of caffeine for a long period of time, the effects will become less and less. You take more and more. We don't know in studies whether the fat burn effect is also reduced from that. What we do know is that the overall effect of ingesting sort of like 500 milligrams of caffeine over an hour works out at about 11 calories difference. So yeah, you might be getting like 11 calories more fat burn from taking a fat burn supplement, but who is going to take them? You might then say, okay, over a month, over a year, that equates to a lot. You're not going to take a fat burning supplement 24 hours a day, especially a stimulant containing one.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe it might work out to 200 calories if you took caffeine tablets all day, every day. So yeah, don't bother with fat burners unless you're about to step on stage in the final week of prep or something like that. If you're going to use a green tea tablet or a caffeine tablet or a thermogenic fat burning tablet, use it as a pre-workout stimulant. And you'll get a far better sort of synergistic effect there. Was that less than 2 minutes, or was that a bit more?
You were over, mate. So it's a null answer from. So basically, don't take them.
He didn't know. It doesn't count.
Yeah,
the answer doesn't count, so he didn't know. So
yeah, basically, you didn't know, Rich. You were too long.
Stopped him.
You can't say it succinctly. You don't know it at all.
Yeah. Rich, thank you so much for coming onto the show. How can they find out more about you if they want to follow your stuff? Because it is good stuff. You always put out amazing content.
Yes.
So where can they follow and get your content? Websites, Instagram, Facebook, what are you using? Where can people get you?
So I've been quiet for the last month, obviously, because, there was an internal coup and my body tried to get rid of me. But other than that, I tend to be quite active on Instagram, and that's at Rich Sen Coaching. Hopefully I'll give you the links to have a look at that. If people are interested in actually learning academically structured from myself, I'll give you guys the link to our free course for the Nutrition Academy.
Nice.
Which is sort of like a tops off like level 3 PT knowledge to help get you onto our main course, which is designed as a prelude to like the ISSN certificates and things like that. So basically, if you want to get damn good at nutrition things, do our courses online.
And it is the only accredited course in the UK, right?
Yes, it is, through the Association for Nutrition, who are the guys who basically keep all of the registered nutritionists and so on in check. Not only that it's accredited, it's also recognised by like the ISSN, recognise it as an entry course for their diploma. And then you've got our past students who've gone on to university now. So we've got 2 girls who've gone on to study at Bath University, for example, which the nutrition course is very good there. Yeah, they're very, very good with their sciences.
That's where I went, yeah. Bath. Big up.
So it's not just that there's the certification there, it's that there's this constant external peer review of our content, and it's recognised as being very good.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple of other big ones in the pipeline too, like the child nutrition stuff, which we're working on with some registered paediatric dietitians. So it's all very legit stuff. And then the behavioural change and the motivational interviewing. So if you're a personal trainer and you don't know about behavioural change theory and how to conduct a motivational interview, you should probably get onto our list for the next one of those, because it's like the most powerful tool you can have.
I know some of our athletes, our Teambox clients, have been onto some of your courses. I've downloaded your course, the free one, which looks great, and I've put it out to all of our clients to say, look, it is a free course, it's fantastic knowledge. Why wouldn't you do that compared to paying for others, which it's not going to be, like you said, as peer reviewed. The science isn't going to be there. It's not as, I know that, the work that you do is absolutely phenomenal, and I couldn't ever, push you guys enough, really. So
thank you. We need one of your Teambox guys for the beta test of the course as well.
Sweet.
I meant to mention that the other day. Because
Nice.
when we do the motivational interviewing course, it has to be done in person.
Yeah.
There's a lot of interaction required there to practice that. So we need 1 or 2 of your coaches to put through that.
Sounds good. I know we'll be keen to do that with you. But no, Rich, thank you so much. We'll put out all the links. And it's called the Nutrition Academy, isn't it? If people just want to Google it.
The-Nutrition-Academy.
Yeah, nice. And how long's the course?
You can now do it all at your own pace.
Yeah.
So we have the self-paced online option where you can check in with us each week for a call to actually go over content. So you could do it in a week if you wanted, but we advise 8 to 9 weeks. Plus
Almost as long as it's podcast, I think.
Sorry?
Almost as long as it's podcast.
Yes, you could get it done in the time it took us to cover whatever we just talked about.
Pokemon.
Pokemons.
Nice. All right, Rich. Well, take it easy, mate. And listeners, thank you so much. Big thanks to Muscle Food. And thank you to you, Rich, for being just a big bro.
Yeah.
Cheers, Rich.
Never
See you later, mate.
9 grams per kilo.